I stood in my boss Greg's office after 14 months of building an $8 million platform from scratch. Greg just announced he's handing my entire project to Ethan, a 23-year-old fresh graduate who can't distinguish between front-end and back-end architecture. I felt my hands trembling but forced a smile. I slid my resignation letter across Greg's mahogany desk and said with practiced calm, "Ethan's got this." Greg picked up the letter, and as his eyes scanned the first paragraph, all color drained from his face. His lips parted, but no sound came out. The silence in Greg's office stretched for what felt like an eternity. I watched his eyes move across the page, reading my carefully worded resignation. His hand started shaking slightly, making the paper tremble. "Yvonne, wait," he finally managed, his voice cracking. "You're overreacting. Ethan is just going to help you. You're still the lead on this." I let out a short laugh that I didn't bother to hide. "Really? Because the memo I received this morning said I was being reassigned as senior consultant while Ethan takes over as project lead. That doesn't sound like I'm still leading anything." Greg's face flushed red. He hadn't expected me to call him out so directly. "That's just a title change. You know how corporate restructuring works. Your responsibilities aren't changing." "Greg, stop." I held up my hand. "We both know exactly what this is. You're demoting me without having the courage to say it to my face. You're handing 14 months of my work to your wife's nephew because you promised her you'd give him a real opportunity." His jaw clenched. I'd hit the mark perfectly. "This isn't about Ethan being family," Greg said, but his voice lacked conviction. "He brings fresh perspectives, new ideas." Fresh perspectives. I couldn't stop myself from laughing again. "Greg, 3 days ago I sat in a meeting where Ethan asked me what an API was. He thought sequel was pronounced like the word sequel, as in movies. He has a degree in business administration with a minor in computer science, which means he took maybe 4 programming classes total. And you're giving him a platform that handles real-time logistics data for 1,700 trucks across 48 states. Greg opened his mouth, closed it, then tried again. "You're being unfair. Everyone starts somewhere." "You're right. Everyone does start somewhere. Somewhere appropriate for their skill level. Not as the lead on an $8 million project that I built from nothing. I'd spent 14 months on this project. 14 months of 80-hour weeks. I missed my sister Emma's wedding because I was debugging the integration with the legacy mainframe system. I canceled 4 vacations. My boyfriend Derek and I barely saw each other because I was always at the office or working from home until 2 in the morning. I wrote over 200,000 lines of code. I designed the architecture that could scale to handle 5 years of projected growth. I personally trained the support team. I created all the documentation. I integrated the new platform with systems that were older than Ethan, systems that ran on technology from the 1980s that somehow still processed millions of dollars in freight transactions every day. And now Greg wanted to hand it to someone who thought API stood for Application Personal Interface. "Look," Greg said, switching tactics. His voice became smoother, more conciliatory. "I understand you're upset. How about we discuss a raise? We can revisit the title situation. Maybe there's been a miscommunication." "There's been no miscommunication," I said. "I understand perfectly, and my resignation stands. I'm using my accumulated vacation time, which gives me 4 weeks of paid leave before my official end date." Greg's face went from conciliatory to angry in a heartbeat. "You can't just leave. You're contractually obligated to complete a knowledge transfer. You signed an agreement." I reached into my bag and pulled out 2 documents I'd prepared last night after seeing that memo. My employee handbook and my contract, both of which I'd reviewed with my friend Marcus, who practiced corporate law. "Actually, Greg, I can." I opened the contract to a page I'd marked with a sticky note. "See this clause right here? Knowledge transfers are required when reasonable notice is provided, and the transition period is mutually agreed upon. Since you reassigned my project without my knowledge or consent, and since I'm using my contractually guaranteed vacation time, there's no requirement for me to do anything beyond what I've already documented." I pulled out my phone and opened the company repository. Everything is here. Every line of code, every design document, every architectural decision, every integration specification. It's all documented in the wiki I maintained. If Ethan can't figure it out from 200 pages of detailed technical documentation, that's not my problem. That's yours. Greg stared at me, and I could see the exact moment he realized he'd trapped himself. He'd been so focused on giving his nephew a prestigious title that he hadn't thought through the logistics of actually making it work. The client presentation is in 6 weeks, he said, his voice taking on a desperate edge. We promised them the platform would be fully operational. This could cost the company millions if we don't deliver. Then I suggest you get Ethan up to speed quickly. I stood up, smoothing my skirt. You kept telling everyone he was brilliant, a real prodigy, fresh ideas and all that. I'm sure he'll figure it out. Yvonne, please, be reasonable. I am being reasonable. You made a business decision to replace me. I'm making a business decision to leave. That's how this works. I walked toward the door and Greg called after me. You'll never work in logistics tech again. I know everyone in this industry. Everyone. I turned back to look at him. Is that a threat? It's a fact. You walk out that door, you're burning bridges you can't rebuild. I smiled at him, the same calm smile I'd given him when I handed over my resignation. Ethan's got this, Greg. You said so yourself. I walked out of his office and went straight to my desk. The open floor plan meant everyone had heard at least part of our conversation. People pretended to be working, but I could feel their eyes on me. I packed my desk in 30 minutes. 15 years of my career fit into 2 cardboard boxes. Pictures of my family, a few books, my favorite coffee mug, some personal items. Everything else belonged to Titan Freight Solutions. My team lead, a guy named Justin, who'd been with the company for 8 years, approached me as I was packing. Is it true? You're really leaving? I'm really leaving. Because of Ethan. Because I'm not going to stay somewhere that treats me like I'm disposable. Justin nodded slowly. I don't blame you. For what it's worth, everyone knows this is garbage. Ethan's a nice kid, but he's not ready for this. Then maybe you should tell Greg that. And end up where you are. No thanks. I've got a mortgage and 2 kids. I didn't argue with him. Everyone had their own calculations to make. I carried my boxes to my car, loaded them in the trunk, and drove away from Titan Freight Solutions. As I pulled onto the highway, I felt a strange mixture of relief and terror. I'd just quit a 6-figure job with nothing lined up. I had savings, but not enough to last forever. I had a mortgage on my condo, a car payment, student loans. But I couldn't stay one more day. Not one more hour. I couldn't watch Ethan get credit for my work while I was shoved aside. I drove home, carried my boxes upstairs, and sat on my couch. My hands were shaking again, but this time it wasn't from anger. It was fear. What had I just done? 2 days after walking out of Titan Freight, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop updating my resume. The initial shock had worn off, replaced by cautious optimism. I had 15 years of software engineering experience. My LinkedIn profile had already started buzzing with messages from recruiters. People in my network were reaching out, asking if I was looking for new opportunities. I felt like maybe, just maybe, I'd made the right call. My phone rang. Derek, my boyfriend of 3 years. We'd been talking about moving in together before all this happened. I answered, expecting support. Hey, can I come over? He asked. We need to talk. Those 4 words never meant anything good, but I agreed. An hour later, Derek sat across from me in my living room, and he didn't look happy. So you really just quit, he said, just like that. I told you what happened. They demoted me and gave my project to an unqualified kid. What was I supposed to do? You were supposed to talk to me first. His voice rose. We've been planning our future together, Yvonne. We were going to get a place, maybe get engaged next year. And you just threw away your income without even discussing it with me. I stared at him. I didn't throw it away. I refused to be disrespected. You were dramatic. You could have dealt with the demotion for a few months while looking for something else. You could have kept the steady paycheck. But no, you had to make some grand gesture. Grand gesture, I felt anger rising in my chest. Derek, they gave 14 months of my work to someone who doesn't know what he's doing. They humiliated me. And now you're unemployed. How is that better? I'll find something else. Will you? In this economy. Do you know how long it can take to find a job at your level? 6 months, maybe a year. And in the meantime, what I'm supposed to support both of us when we move in together. I never asked you to support me. I have savings. Savings that are going to run out. Yvonne, I can't be with someone this impulsive, this irresponsible. The words hit me like a physical blow. Irresponsible. I worked 80-hour weeks for over a year. I sacrificed everything for that project. And then you quit, without thinking about the consequences, without thinking about us. There is no us if you can't support me when I stand up for myself. Derek stood up. You're right. There isn't. I can't do this. I can't be with someone so unstable. Unstable. You heard me. I need stability, Yvonne. I need a partner I can count on. Someone who thinks before they act. He walked to the door, and I followed him, shock, giving way to anger. So that's it. 3 years, and you're just done. You made your choice. I'm making mine. He left, closing the door behind him with a finality that echoed through my apartment. I stood there frozen. In 2 days, I'd lost my job and my relationship. Everything I'd built over the past few years had crumbled. I tried to tell myself I was better off without Derek if he couldn't support me, but it didn't stop the pain. It didn't stop me from crying until my eyes were swollen and my head ached. But I didn't have time to wallow. I had to find a job. I forced myself back to my laptop and started applying. Over the next 4 days, I identified 3 promising positions. 1 at a competing logistics company, 1 at a major tech firm building supply chain software, and 1 at a startup developing transportation analytics. All 3 were perfect fits for my experience. I customized my resume and cover letter for each position and submitted my applications. Then, I waited. The first response came 3 days later, a rejection from the logistics company. The email was oddly vague. Thank you for your interest. We've decided to move forward with other candidates who more closely match our needs. The second rejection came the next day. Same vague language. The third rejection arrived 2 days after that. I sat staring at my laptop, confused. These positions were perfect for me. I was overqualified, if anything. Something felt wrong. I applied to 7 more positions over the next week. I got 4 immediate rejections and 3 non-responses. My savings account was getting smaller. My mortgage payment went through along with my car payment. I watched my balance drop and felt panic starting to build. I needed to know what was happening. I reached out to Beth, a former colleague who'd left Titan Freight 6 months ago to become a hiring manager at a competing logistics tech company. We met for coffee at a place downtown. Beth hugged me when she arrived, but she looked uncomfortable. I heard you left Titan Freight, she said carefully. You heard correctly, and I'm trying to figure out why I can't get an interview anywhere. Beth looked down at her coffee. Yvonne, I need to tell you something, but you can't say where you heard it. My stomach dropped. What? Greg has been making calls. He's telling people you abandoned a critical project and left the company in crisis. He's saying you didn't provide proper notice, that you were unprofessional and unreliable. The coffee shop suddenly felt too hot. He's well connected in logistics tech. He knows all the major players. And he's been poisoning the well. That's defamation. He's lying. I know, but he's framing it as just sharing his professional experience with you. Technically, he's probably not saying anything actionable. He's just making sure no one wants to hire you. I felt sick. Why would he do this? Because you embarrassed him. You quit publicly, and now his pet project is apparently falling apart. From what I hear, Ethan is in way over his head and the client is getting nervous. Greg needs someone to blame, and you're not there to defend yourself. So my career is just over. Because Greg is vindictive. Beth reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Not over, but you might need to look outside logistics tech. Try general software development or a different industry entirely. I went home and felt the walls of my condo closing in. 3 months. That's how long my savings would last with my current expenses. 3 months to find a job in a new industry where I had no connections and my former boss was actively sabotaging me. I applied to 20 more jobs that week. Anything remotely related to software engineering. I didn't care about the industry anymore. I just needed income. 3 weeks after walking out of Titan Freight, I'd applied to 67 jobs. I'd had exactly 2 interviews, both of which went nowhere. The interviewers seemed interested until they asked about my recent employment history. Then their enthusiasm cooled. My savings were dwindling faster than I'd calculated. My car had needed an unexpected repair, $1,200 for a new transmission component. I'd put it on my credit card because I couldn't touch my savings. I needed that for the mortgage. I was eating once a day to save money. I'd stopped going anywhere that cost money. My life had become a cycle of applying to jobs and checking my bank account. Then my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. "Is this Yvonne Patterson?" "Yes. Who's this?" "My name is David Chen. I'm an attorney representing Titan Freight Solutions. I'm calling to inform you that the company is considering legal action against you for breach of contract and sabotage." The world tilted. "What?" "The company alleges that you deliberately wrote code designed to fail without your maintenance, and that you deleted critical documentation before leaving. These actions have caused significant financial damage to Titan Freight Solutions and their clients." "That's insane. I didn't do any of that. Everything is documented in the repository." "The company has evidence of deleted files and corrupted databases. We're prepared to file suit if this matter can't be resolved." "I didn't delete anything. Check the logs. Check the backups." "We have checked the logs, Miss Patterson. They show your credentials accessing and deleting files on your last day of employment." "That's impossible. I was packing my desk. I didn't touch any systems." "Nevertheless, that's what the evidence shows. I'll be sending you a formal notice. I suggest you retain counsel." He hung up. I sat frozen, phone still pressed to my ear. This couldn't be happening. They were blaming me for their failure. Greg was building a case to make me the scapegoat. I called Marcus immediately. Marcus and I had been friends since college. He practiced corporate law at a mid-sized firm downtown. "They're threatening to sue me." I told him, my voice shaking. "They're saying I sabotaged the project." "Send me everything," Marcus said. "Your employment contract, any communications with them, the cease and desist or whatever they sent you." I forwarded him the email from the attorney along with my contract and the resignation letter. He called me back 2 hours later. "Okay, I've reviewed everything. The good news is they don't have a strong case. You fulfilled your contractual obligations. The bad news is they can still sue you and drag you through expensive litigation." "I can't afford expensive litigation." "I know. My advice is to lie low. They're probably bluffing, trying to scare you into some kind of settlement. Don't communicate with them except through an attorney. If they actually file suit, we'll deal with it then." "Can you represent me?" "Pro bono if it comes to that. We're friends. I'm not going to let them steamroll you." I thanked him and hung up feeling slightly better, but the fear remained. What if they weren't bluffing? 2 days later, I got my answer. I was at the grocery store buying the cheapest food I could find when my phone buzzed with an alert from my banking app. "Account frozen pending legal review." I pulled up my account. $0 available, but my balance showed my savings were still there. I just couldn't access them. I called the bank from the parking lot, groceries unpurchased and abandoned in the store. "There's a court order," the bank representative explained. "A pre-judgment attachment related to a lawsuit from Titan Freight Solutions. Your account will remain frozen until the matter is resolved." "How long will that take?" "I can't say. You'll need to speak with your attorney." I had $300 in cash in my wallet. That was all I could access. Everything else was frozen. My mortgage payment was due in 5 days, my car payment in 3. I called Marcus in a panic. They did what? Marcus sounded furious. "That's incredibly aggressive. They must have convinced a judge you were a flight risk or about to hide assets. This is borderline illegal." "Can you fix it?" "I can file a motion to unfreeze your accounts. But Yvonne, this is going to take time. Maybe weeks. Their lawyers are clearly going scorched earth. I don't have weeks. I have bills due. I'll move as fast as I can. I hung up and stared at my phone. $300. I had $300 to my name and a freezer full of food at home that would run out in maybe a week. I called my parents in Florida. They were retired, living on Social Security and Dad's pension from 30 years at the post office. They didn't have extra money. "Honey, I wish we could help," my mom said. "But we barely make our own bills each month." "I know, Mom. I just didn't know who else to call." I thought about calling Emma, my sister, but she was a teacher with 2 kids and a mountain of student loans. She was struggling too. I was completely alone. Over the next 2 weeks, I sold everything I could. My laptop went for $800, my television for $200, some jewelry for $300. I sold my nice clothes, my kitchen appliances, anything with resale value. I scraped together enough for my car payment, but the mortgage payment came and went. I was now 30 days late. The bank sent me a warning letter. I was living on rice and beans, eating once a day. I'd lost 15 pounds. My clothes hung loose on my frame. I kept applying to jobs, but now I was using the public library's computers because I'd sold my laptop and my internet had been shut off for non-payment. Every interview ended the same way. They'd Google my name, see the pending lawsuit, and I'd never hear from them again. Derek texted me once. "Heard about your legal troubles. Glad I got out when I did." That message almost broke me completely. I sat in the library bathroom and cried until my eyes burned. Then I got served. A process server found me at the library and handed me papers. Titan Freight was suing me for $250,000. The lawsuit claimed their client had pulled the $8 million contract because the platform failed. They blamed me for deliberate sabotage, for destroying documentation, for what they called corporate extortion. The filing included screenshots that appeared to show me deleting files from the system, but I knew I'd never deleted anything. Someone with admin access must have done it and altered the logs to frame me. I took the papers to Marcus. He spread them across his desk and read through them carefully. "This is bad," he said finally. "Even though the claims are false fighting, this is going to require forensic IT analysis. We'll need to hire experts to examine their systems and prove the logs were falsified. That kind of defense could cost $100,000 or more." "I don't have $100,000. I don't have $1,000. I barely have $100. "I know, and they know it too. This is a strategic lawsuit. They're betting you can't afford to fight and you'll just accept whatever settlement they offer." "What settlement would they offer?" "Probably something like you admit wrongdoing, pay back some arbitrary amount, sign an NDA, and they drop the suit." "But I didn't do anything wrong." "I know. But sometimes fighting for the truth costs more than people can pay." I left Marcus's office feeling hollower than I'd ever felt in my life. I went home to my increasingly empty apartment. I'd sold most of my furniture. I was sleeping on a cheap air mattress I'd bought at a discount store. I sat on that air mattress in the middle of my living room and looked around at what my life had become. Empty walls, empty rooms, empty bank account, empty future. I thought about just giving up. Maybe I should let them win. Maybe I should declare bankruptcy, let them take everything and start over somewhere else with nothing. Move to a different state where no one knew my name. Find some entry-level job and rebuild from zero. I was 38 years old, and my life was over. 5 weeks after walking out of Titan Freight, I received a notice from my mortgage company, 30 days late. If I didn't make a payment plus late fees within 10 days, they'd begin foreclosure proceedings. I had $63 to my name. Marcus was still working on unfreezing my accounts, but Titan Freight's lawyers fought every motion. They'd apparently decided to make an example of me to show what happened to employees who crossed them. I'd sold everything of value. My condo looked like a squatter lived there. Air mattress, one folding chair, some plastic dishes from the dollar store, my nice furniture, my decorations, my books, everything gone. I was eating 1 meal a day, usually rice with canned vegetables. I'd lost 20 pounds. My clothes didn't fit. I looked hollow-eyed and exhausted. My utility bills were piling up. I'd gotten a disconnect notice for electricity. My phone was about to be shut off for non-payment. I kept applying to jobs, but it was hopeless. The lawsuit was public record. Every potential employer could see it. Plus, I suspected Greg was still making calls, still poisoning the well. I'd had one interview in the past 3 weeks. The hiring manager had been sympathetic until his HR department did a background check. Then I got a polite rejection email. I was sitting in the library applying to jobs I was overqualified for when my phone rang, a number I didn't recognize. Is this Yvonne Patterson? Yes. My name is Jennifer Walsh. I'm a journalist with Tech Industry Today. I'm writing an article about workplace retaliation, and I heard about your situation. Would you be willing to talk? For a moment I considered it. Public sympathy might help. But then I thought about Titan Freight's lawyers twisting anything I said. I can't. I'm sorry. I'm in active litigation. I understand. But if you change your mind, please call me. She gave me her number and hung up. I thought about what she'd said. Workplace retaliation. That's exactly what this was. But knowing it didn't help me pay my mortgage. That night I got another call. A different lawyer, not David Chen. Miss Patterson, my name is Robert Finch. I represent Titan Freight Solutions in an expanded matter. We're amending our lawsuit to include additional damages. Additional damages? Yes. Our client has formally terminated their contract with Titan Freight, citing the platform's failure. Titan Freight is now seeking $250,000 in damages from you for sabotage plus reputational harm plus legal fees. The total claim is now $375,000. I couldn't breathe. That's insane. We have substantial evidence, Miss Patterson. Screenshots showing you deleting critical files, logs of you accessing restricted systems, testimony from colleagues about your hostile attitude before leaving. Hostile attitude, I was professional until the moment I walked out. That's not what our witnesses say. We have emails you sent that were threatening in nature. I never sent threatening emails. We have them, Miss Patterson. We suggest you settle this matter before it becomes more expensive for everyone involved. I don't have that kind of money. Then perhaps you should consider bankruptcy. We're prepared to pursue every legal avenue available to us. We'll put a lien on your property. Garnish your wages if you ever find employment again. This won't go away. He hung up. I sat in the dark because I'd turned off most of my lights to save electricity. I couldn't stop shaking. They'd manufactured evidence. Fake emails, altered logs. They were building an entire false narrative, and I had no way to fight it. I pulled out the bankruptcy papers Marcus had given me. I'd been avoiding even looking at them, but now I spread them across my folding chair. Maybe this was the answer. Declare bankruptcy. Let them take the condo. Start completely over. I was filling out the first page when my phone rang again. Another unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Yvonne, this is Ethan. I froze. Ethan. The person at the center of this nightmare. What do you want? I need to talk to you. In person. Please. It's urgent. I have nothing to say to you. I have something to say to you. Something important. I'll pay you. $1,000 cash just to meet with me for an hour. $1,000. I needed that money desperately. But meeting with Ethan felt like a betrayal of myself. Why would you pay me $1,000? Because what's happening to you is wrong, and I'm the only one who knows the truth. My heart started pounding. What truth? Not over the phone. Meet me tomorrow. There's a coffee shop on Maple Street called The Grind. 2 in the afternoon. I'll have the cash. He hung up before I could respond. I sat there, phone in my hand, mind racing. What truth did Ethan know? Was this some kind of trap? Were Titan Freight's lawyers going to be there waiting to serve me with more papers? But I needed that $1,000. My electricity was about to be shut off. I could buy food, maybe make a partial mortgage payment. I decided to go, but I'd be careful. I'd meet him in public where nothing bad could happen. The next day I arrived at The Grind 15 minutes early. and sat where I could see the entrance. I'd worn my last decent outfit trying to look like I hadn't completely fallen apart, even though I had. Ethan walked in at exactly 2. He looked terrible. Dark circles under his eyes, rumpled clothes, the look of someone who hadn't slept properly in weeks. He spotted me and walked over carrying a manila envelope. He sat down across from me without ordering anything. "Thank you for coming," he said. "Where's the money?" He slid the envelope across the table. I opened it and saw cash. I counted quickly. $1,000 exactly. "Talk," I said. Ethan looked around nervously, then leaned forward. "The project is a disaster. Complete failure. The client pulled out last week. The company is in crisis mode. But you didn't cause it. I did." "Well, me and Greg." "I know that." "No, you don't understand. Greg is framing you. He deleted those files himself. He altered the logs to make it look like you did it." My hands went cold. "How do you know?" "Because I found proof." Ethan pulled out his phone and opened a folder of screenshots. "I've been trying to salvage the project, going through backups, trying to understand your architecture, and I found something weird in the audit logs." He showed me his phone. "See this? These are the real backup logs that the system keeps separately. They can't be altered without admin-level access and special permissions. And look at the timestamp here." I squinted at the small text. A deletion event dated 2 days after I'd left the company. The username showed Greg's admin account. "Greg deleted critical configuration files 3 days after you quit," Ethan said. "Then he went into the main system logs and changed them to show your account doing the deletion on your last day. But he didn't know about the backup audit trail." "Why would he delete his own files?" "Because the project was already failing. I was in over my head from day one, exactly like you said. But Greg couldn't admit he made a mistake, so he created a crisis, then blamed you for it. He needed a reason for the failure that wasn't his terrible decision-making." I stared at the screenshots. This was it. This was proof that I was innocent, that Greg had framed me. "Why are you telling me this?" Ethan looked miserable. "Because this is wrong. I never wanted your project. My Aunt Greg's wife, she pushed me into applying, said it would be a great opportunity. I told her I wasn't qualified, but she wouldn't listen. She convinced Greg to give me the role. You could have said no. I'm 23. I just graduated. When your family tells you they're handing you a great job, you don't say no. But I knew it was wrong. And now I'm watching them destroy you, and I can't stay quiet." "You've been quiet for 5 weeks." "I know. I'm a coward. But I couldn't find the evidence until yesterday. I've been digging through the systems trying to figure out what you built, and I stumbled across this. And once I saw it, I couldn't pretend anymore." "Do you have copies of this?" "Everything. Screenshots, exported log files, the whole audit trail. It's all time-stamped and verified by the backup system." "This proves Greg committed fraud." "Yeah, and he's been telling me to lie in depositions. He's been coaching me on what to say about your performance. I have recordings of those conversations, too." "Recordings?" Ethan looked ashamed. "I started recording our meetings 2 weeks ago, just on my phone. I knew something was really wrong, and I wanted proof that I'd tried to tell him this wasn't working." "You recorded your boss admitting to fraud?" "Not explicitly, but he says things like, 'We need to make sure our story is straight, that we can't let Yvonne make us look bad.' There's one recording where he literally says he's teaching you a lesson for embarrassing him." This was better than I'd hoped for. This wasn't just proof I was innocent. This was proof Greg had committed multiple crimes. "Why are you giving this to me?" "Because it's the right thing to do." Ethan's voice cracked. "I'm part of why your life fell apart. If I'd refused the job, none of this would have happened. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I can at least give you the truth. Greg will fire you. He'll come after you too." "I know. My family will probably disown me. My aunt is already barely speaking to me because I keep telling her the project is failing. But I can't watch an innocent person get destroyed because I was too scared to speak up." I looked at this kid, this 23-year-old who'd been thrown into something he wasn't ready for, and felt a strange mixture of anger and pity. "Send me everything," I said. "All the screenshots, all the recordings, all the evidence. Send it from an anonymous email account. Use a secure service. Then delete everything from your devices. What are you going to do? I'm going to clear my name. And I'm going to make sure Greg pays for what he did. Ethan nodded. I'll send it tonight. There's one more thing you should know. Greg's been telling other companies not to hire you. I heard him on the phone with someone at DataStream Logistics telling them you were unstable and unprofessional. So Beth had been right. Greg was actively blackballing me. Thank you for telling me. Ethan stood up. I'm sorry, Yvonne, for all of it. You were in a bad situation, but you're doing the right thing now. He left, and I sat there with the envelope of cash and a phone full of evidence that could change everything. I immediately called Marcus. I have evidence, I told him. Proof that Greg framed me. Proof he deleted the files himself. I need you to see this right now. I met Marcus at his office and showed him everything Ethan had sent. Marcus's eyes got wider with every screenshot, every audio clip. This is incredible, he said. This isn't just enough to clear your name. This is evidence of fraud. Evidence tampering, possibly criminal conduct. Greg could go to prison for this. What do? We file an emergency motion immediately. We present this evidence to the court and get your accounts unfrozen. Then we go on the offensive. Marcus worked through the night preparing motions and affidavits. I helped explaining the technical details of the logs and what they proved. We filed everything the next morning. And that's when things started moving fast. Within 48 hours of filing the motion, I got a call from a lawyer I'd never heard of before. Miss Patterson, my name is Thomas Wright. I represent DataCore Systems. DataCore. They were the client that had supposedly pulled out of the contract with Titan Freight. What can I do for you? We've been trying to reach you for 3 weeks, but we were told you'd left the state and weren't returning calls. I'm glad I finally tracked you down. I've been right here. I never left. Interesting. Well, I'll get straight to the point. DataCore pulled our contract with Titan Freight, but not because the platform failed. No. We pulled out because during our technical due diligence, we discovered that Greg had been lying about who built the platform. He was telling us Ethan designed and developed it. Our CTO sat down with Ethan for 2 hours and quickly realized he had no idea what he was talking about. We felt deceived and walked away. I leaned against my kitchen counter, barely believing what I was hearing. But then our legal team saw the lawsuit Titan Freight filed against you, Wright continued, and we saw the motion your attorney filed with all the evidence. We've done some investigation and we now understand that you're the actual architect and developer. That's correct. Miss Patterson, DataCore is very interested in the platform you designed. We still need it. Would you be interested in discussing a contract directly with us? To do what? To build a similar platform for DataCore. We'll pay you double what Titan Freight was paying. Plus, we'll cover all your legal fees related to this lawsuit. And we'd like to discuss filing our own lawsuit against Titan Freight for fraud and misrepresentation. I almost dropped the phone. You want to hire me? More than that. We want to bring you on as an independent contractor to build the platform with the potential for a permanent executive position if the project succeeds. We're talking about a 2-year contract worth approximately $3 million plus benefits and stock options. $3 million. You're the best in this space, Miss Patterson. We should have done our homework better and worked with you from the start. We'd like to correct that mistake. I couldn't speak. My throat was tight, my eyes burning with tears. Miss Patterson. I'm here. Yes. I'm very interested. Excellent. I'll send over the contract details this afternoon. We'll also be in touch with your attorney about handling your legal defense. Titan Freight won't know what hit them. I hung up and immediately burst into tears. Not sad tears. Relief. Joy. Disbelief. One phone call from Ethan had changed everything. With DataCore funding my legal defense, everything moved quickly. Marcus brought in forensic IT specialists who confirmed everything Ethan had revealed. Greg had deleted critical files, falsified logs, and lied to clients. The evidence was overwhelming. Titan Freight's lawyers tried to withdraw from the case when they realized their client had lied to them, but the damage was already done. The state bar opened an ethics investigation into Greg for fraud. My accounts were unfrozen within a week. I could finally pay my bills. I could buy groceries without counting every penny. I could breathe again. Datacorp's contract was everything they'd promised. $3 million over 2 years with a signing bonus of $50,000 that hit my account like a miracle. I paid my mortgage, paid off my car, paid off my credit cards. I bought a new laptop, a real bed furniture. I restocked my empty apartment. But Greg wasn't done fighting. He made one last desperate move. He tried to intimidate Ethan into recanting everything. He called Ethan into his office and threatened to have him arrested for hacking into admin accounts. He told Ethan's aunt that her nephew was a traitor who'd destroyed the family name. The family pressure was intense. Ethan's aunt stopped speaking to him. His parents called him crying, begging him to take it back and say he'd made a mistake. But Ethan held firm. With money from Datacorp, which I'd negotiated as part of my contract, Ethan hired his own lawyer. He gave a formal deposition confirming everything. He explained how Greg had manipulated him, how the project was doomed from the start, how Greg had created the crisis to cover his own mistakes. Greg's wife, Ethan's aunt, finally saw the truth. When she learned her husband had committed fraud and framed an innocent woman, she filed for divorce. The family fractured, but Ethan stood by his testimony. Meanwhile, word spread through the logistics tech industry. Beth, my former colleague, wrote a detailed LinkedIn post about what had happened. She didn't name names, but anyone in the industry knew exactly who she was talking about. The post went viral in our professional circles. Other Titan Freight employees started coming forward with stories of Greg's mismanagement and retaliation. The board of directors finally woke up and launched an internal investigation. What they found was damning. Greg had been covering up problems for years. He'd blamed departing employees for his own mistakes multiple times. He'd lied to clients about capabilities and timelines. The company's reputation had been eroding for months, and Greg had been hiding it. The board fired Greg without severance. They issued a public apology to me, which meant nothing legally but felt good anyway. But Greg's problems were just beginning. The FBI opened an investigation because Titan Freight handled government contracts. Defrauding clients and falsifying records while working on federal logistics contracts was a serious crime. Greg tried to reach out to me through intermediaries. He wanted to settle to make this go away. He offered $500,000, then $1 million, then more. Marcus advised me to reject everything. We have him dead to rights, he said. Why settle for less than complete victory? I agreed. I wanted my full vindication. The case went before a judge. With all the evidence, the hearing lasted less than 3 hours. The judge dismissed Titan Freight's lawsuit with prejudice and issued sanctions against the company and their lawyers for bringing a frivolous case. The judge also referred Greg's conduct to federal prosecutors. But I still wasn't done. I filed my own lawsuit against Titan Freight and Greg personally. Defamation, fraudulent litigation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, interference with business relations. My lawsuit detailed everything: how Greg had demoted me without cause, framed me for sabotage, frozen my accounts, blackballed me in the industry, and nearly destroyed my life. Titan Freight's insurance company took one look at the evidence and pushed for settlement. They didn't want this going to trial, where a jury might award me even more. Greg's personal lawyers tried to fight, but he had no defense. The evidence was overwhelming. 6 months after I'd walked out of Titan Freight, I sat in Marcus's office reviewing settlement offers. Titan Freight's insurance offered $1.2 million. Greg's personal assets after his divorce and legal fees amounted to about $300,000. His lawyers pushed for bankruptcy protection, but Marcus fought hard. "He destroyed your life deliberately," Marcus said. "He doesn't get to hide behind bankruptcy." We negotiated hard. In the end, Titan Freight paid $1.2 million. Greg paid $300,000 from personal assets before declaring bankruptcy. The company's insurance covered most of it, but Greg's reputation was destroyed forever. The logistics tech industry was small. Everyone knew what he'd done. He'd never work in the field again. And then came the federal charges. The FBI's investigation found evidence of contract fraud, false statements to federal agencies, and obstruction of justice. Greg was indicted on multiple felony counts. His trial was scheduled for 8 months later. I'd probably have to testify, but I was ready. Titan Freight couldn't survive the scandal. Their clients fled, their employees quit. 3 months after Greg's firing, the company filed for bankruptcy. Over 200 people lost their jobs. I felt terrible about that. Those people hadn't done anything wrong. But it wasn't my fault. It was Greg's. He'd built a house of cards, and when I refused to be part of his foundation, the whole thing collapsed. 6 months after I walked out of Greg's office, I sat in a modern workspace overlooking the city skyline. My new office at DataCore Systems was bright and spacious with floor-to-ceiling windows and a desk that didn't wobble. I was the Chief Technology Officer of DataCore's new platform division. I led a team of 12 engineers, all of whom I'd personally hired. We were building the logistics platform I'd always envisioned, but better, bigger, without compromises or interference from people who didn't understand the technology. The settlements had changed my life financially. After taxes and legal fees, I had enough money to feel secure for the first time in years. I paid off all my debts. I bought a beautiful house with a dedicated home office and a backyard. I even got a dog, a golden retriever I named Justice, who slept under my desk while I worked. My sister Emma flew out to visit. We spent a weekend together, really talking for the first time in years. I always thought you were too obsessed with work, Emma admitted over dinner. I didn't understand why you cared so much about your career. But now I get it. You weren't just working for a paycheck. You were building something meaningful. And when someone tried to take that away, you fought for it. I almost didn't fight, I said. I almost gave up. But you didn't. That's what matters. The platform launched 2 months after that conversation. Early testing exceeded every expectation. DataCore's clients loved it. The company started talking about taking it to market as a standalone product, which could make me very wealthy through my stock options. I'd started dating again, too. Cautiously, but genuinely. I met a civil rights attorney named James at an industry conference. He understood what I'd been through. He'd fought his own battles against powerful people who thought they were untouchable. You did something rare, he told me on our 3rd date. Most people can't afford to fight back. The system is designed to protect the powerful, but you found a way. I got lucky. Ethan came forward. DataCore believed me. It could have gone differently. But it didn't. And now your story is out there. Other people will see it and know they can fight too. He was right. Beth told me my story had become legendary in logistics tech. Young engineers, especially women, talked about me as someone who refused to be pushed around. Several people had bad situations, citing my example. I ran into Beth herself at an industry conference 3 months after the settlement. You're kind of a hero, you know, she said over drinks. I'm not a hero. I just couldn't stay somewhere that didn't value me. That's exactly why you're a hero. Most people stay. They convince themselves it's not that bad, that they need the job, that fighting back is too risky. You walked away from a 6-figure salary with no backup plan because you knew your worth. I thought about that conversation later, sitting in my new office with Justice snoring at my feet and my team collaborating happily in the background. I'd learned something important through all of this. Your value isn't determined by how others treat you. It's determined by how you refuse to accept being undervalued. If I'd stayed at Titan Freight, accepted the demotion, and watched Ethan get credit for my work, I would have lost myself completely. Not just my career, but my sense of self-worth. Standing up for myself was terrifying. It cost me everything in the short term, but surrendering my dignity would have cost me more in the long term. I also learned that documenting everything matters. My meticulous record-keeping saved me. Every email I'd saved, every design document I'd written, every line of code I'd commented, all of it became evidence that I'd built something real and valuable. And I learned that vindictive people often destroy themselves. I didn't have to actively ruin Greg. I just had to stand my ground and let the truth emerge. His own actions, his own lies, his own corruption brought him down. Most importantly, I learned that when someone shows you who they really are, believe them immediately. Greg showed me he didn't value me the moment he handed my project to his unqualified nephew. I didn't waste time trying to prove my worth to someone who had already decided I was disposable. That single moment of courage, sliding my resignation across his desk and saying, "Ethan's got this," led to everything good that followed. Yes, it also led to months of hell. Unemployment, poverty, legal battles, fear. But even if I'd known all of that was coming, I still would have quit, because staying would have killed something essential in me. Now I'm building something better. The platform I always wanted, with a company that values me for compensation that reflects my worth. Ethan and I talk occasionally. I helped him find an appropriate entry-level position at a smaller company where he could actually learn. He's doing well, growing into the engineer he might become someday. He sends me thank you messages regularly, saying I saved his life by showing him what real integrity looks like. Greg's trial is next month. The federal prosecutors have a strong case. He's looking at 5 to 10 years in prison. His wife took everything in the divorce. His reputation is destroyed. He'll probably never work in tech again. I don't feel sorry for him. He made his choices. Derek, my ex-boyfriend, tried to reach out after the settlement was announced. A long text about how he'd always believed in me and wanted to reconnect. I blocked his number without responding. I learned that the people who can't support you at your lowest don't deserve you at your highest. As I watch the sunset from my office, Justice snoring peacefully, my team wrapping up for the day, I think about that moment in Greg's office, his face going pale as he read my resignation, his lips moving but no sound coming out. He thought he was giving my project to someone more controllable, someone who wouldn't question his authority or threaten his ego. Instead, he destroyed his entire company. Because the truth is, Ethan didn't have it. He never had it. He was a kid thrown into deep water by people who cared more about nepotism than competence. But I had it. I always had it. And now I'm building something better than Greg could have ever imagined. Sometimes the worst professional moment of your life becomes the catalyst for the best thing that ever happens to you. You just have to be brave enough to walk through the fire and come out the other side. I walked through the fire, and I'm still here. Have you ever had to walk away from something you built because others didn't value you? How did you find the courage to stand up for yourself when everything was at stake? I'd love to hear your story in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button. It helps more people find these stories and know they're not alone in their struggles. Subscribe to the channel for more stories about overcoming workplace injustice and finding your strength when everything seems lost. And please share this with anyone who needs to hear that their worth isn't defined by how others treat them. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from people who don't appreciate what you bring to the table. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it reminds you that you're stronger than you think, and that fighting for yourself is always worth it even when the cost seems too high. Remember, your value isn't negotiable. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise.